Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so very excited for today's episode and today's guest because it's been a few weeks since I've lined him up on my calendar, and the more I see about this guy's work, I'm so excited for all the value that he's going to give to us because everything I research tells me that this is the guy when it comes to sales. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Wes Schaeffer. Wes is known as the Sales Whisperer. He sees the message that you want to convey but can't find the words and gives them to you because if you don't toot your own horn, there is no music. I love the way he articulates that. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and he's the president of his HOA. So mow your lawn and pay attention to what this veteran father of 7 and grandfather of 4 has to say. He's also written a couple of books. He's spoken around the world. He's a fellow podcast host with over 800 episodes and was once duct taped to a bar in Korea, which we may or may not talk about because who knows where this conversation is going to go. I already know we're going to be short on time, so I won't say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Wes Schaeffer. All right, Wes, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Heck yes. You not only are the man in the things that you do now, but I love your backstory. I love how many different sides of you there are. So, Wes, let's start there. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Wes? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Oh, man. I don't know. Probably I have a bad low attention span. I like everything, man. We used to always say at the academy, we were so well-rounded, we were pointless. So, who knows, man? I got married early. I was in the Air Force. I got into sales, got into high tech, got my teeth kicked in, was stubborn, had mouths to feed. So I just kept doing what I had to do to put food on the table. And almost 9 years ago, a friend invited me to jiu-jitsu. I got humbled. And so I've been doing that nonstop. Then my HOA board pissed me off during COVID. So I ran for the HOA, became president. That was almost 4 years ago. So I don't know, man. I just, I see something's wrong and I want to fix it.
Yeah, I love that, especially because I know that when you say that you got kicked in the teeth, that's both a metaphor, but it's also quite literal in the case
it's
of
literal.
you.
I wear a mouthpiece. Even with a mouthpiece, I bit my tongue so hard, I bit right through it.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah, it's called the gentle art. It's not so gentle.
But Wes, I don't know if what you're talking about right now is jiu-jitsu or sales, because a lot of people also argue that sales is the same way.
Sales is a full contact sport, dude.
It's true. Let's dive straight into that because a lot of people tuning into today's episode, that's their least favorite part about business. You know, the freedom is exciting, the getting the money is exciting, fulfilling client projects with work that you love. That's all exciting, but sales is the thing that gets that party started. It's also the hardest thing to do. What is it about sales that excites you so much? And on the flip side, why do you think so many people shy away from sales?
Well, they don't understand what sales is. And sales is easy to get into. Okay. You don't need a degree. There's no certification. There's no continuing education, at least by law, right? But the pros are always learning. So when you meet a pro, the sale is easy. It's natural. It's fluid. It's rewarding. It's beneficial. So, but sales really is not that hard. And my first paid sales training client was an architect. He was going out on his own and he had to figure out how to drum up business. And when he learned how people are so predictable, you can get them, it's not manipulation, right? We're not hypnotizing people. I'm not getting them to do something they don't want to do or what's not in their best interest. Because just like being hypnotized, you won't do what you wouldn't normally do, right? You're not going to go kill somebody because you're hypnotized. I know, that's bad, even in your soul, right? Even when you're hypnotized. So the same thing when you're talking with people and you're helping them come to terms with their own reality. Because most of us are running around with blinders on. If we truly knew the extent of our situation and the ramifications, and and how to fix it. If we came to terms with that, we would be addressing the needs. But we don't. Life is busy, it's noisy, it's chaotic. We have our own self-doubts and whatnot. So there's a lot of noise going on. So professional salespeople just help sort through the noise to help the prospect come to their own realization, because we don't change our mind. Okay? We come to a new conclusion when we discover new information. And the only way to truly discover the information is to discover it on our own. I can't tell you, jiu-jitsu is their greatest martial art, whatever. And there's all kind of debates. And you can come try it and say, I hate it. Okay, go do taekwondo, go do kung fu, whatever. Okay. Or you can come try and say, yeah, I love it. It's best for me. This group of people at this time in my life, this is the best thing for me to do. So you come to a new conclusion. So that's really all sales is. So people really take the time, and you need to realize too, there's an old adage in poker that if you don't know who the sucker is at the table, it's you. And so we're all running around in a game. We're being sold. When you call an office, hi, thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line as our menu has changed. They're selling you. They're selling you on wasting your time because they don't want to invest the money in a live receptionist to field your call. Okay, when you go to a restaurant, let me get your name. It'll just be 10 minutes till a table is ready. In the meantime, would you like to see a menu? Okay, how you enter, the smell, the lighting, the noise, the atmosphere. Are there TVs on? Is it a game on? Is it loud? That's all a sale. When you enter a grocery store, most people don't realize this. Most of the time, the produce is on the right. Because in America, we drive on the right. So when you get produce, you feel better about yourself. You feel like you're a good person. You're more likely now as you wander through the store to buy what's on the end cap, the junk food, the sale, right? Why is the meat and the eggs and the dairy always in the back? It gives the grocery store more time to expose you to more things to sell you. So we are literally sales. I always say, fish don't know that they're wet. We don't know that we're constantly being sold to. Once you recognize that, then I think you're a fool if you don't embrace sales, the science and the profession of sales, because it is happening to you all the time. So at a minimum, inoculate yourself to the tactics by developing some rudimentary understanding and basic mastery of some of these skills, so at least it can't be used against you.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about these, Wes, because you're really framing it in a way that I feel like is different than the mainstream message, which is a lot of business owners feel like they are the ones doing the selling. But what I'm hearing you, and I love the hypnotist analogy, is that you can't sell to someone. They have to be open to being sold to. And really what stood out to me is that you said it's our goal as people who are looking to sell a product or a service that we have to provide them with more information to help them come to a new conclusion. I actually think as a business owner, it takes a lot of the onus off of me because I can't convince someone. And that's something that when I was 19 and I started my first business, Wes, and people would ask me, how's it going? I would joke with them and I'd say, sometimes I feel like I'm in the convincing business. It was like pulling teeth. It was so hard to convince people. Whereas your approach sounds literally like that simple framework that you just gave us. Give them more information to guide them to a new conclusion. What does that look like? Is it a story that we tell? You mentioned tactics and skills. How is it that we provide that information to get them to that new conclusion?
Well, you have to make them aware. Have you heard of the ABCs of selling? From Glengarry Glen Ross from like 1993, 1995. Alec Baldwin. A always, B, C closing. Always be closing. Always be closing. Coffee is for closers. It's like that is literally 60 or 70 years old, because the guy that wrote that. It was a Broadway play, or it was a play that became a movie, but it was based on his experience from like the 60s working in a Chicago real estate office. So he was watching guys 40 and 50 years old follow that approach. So that's why I say it's our great grandfathers were selling that way. So it needs to die. My new ABCs of selling, I talk to people about, always be curious, always be concise, always be courteous. So I don't give too much information. I ask questions. And my goal is to ask a question that the prospect can't answer. With the internet, the role of the salesperson changed, and now with AI, it is really changing. Okay, before the internet, we needed salespeople to get information. Now, for 30 years, at least 20 years, you've been able to look up the MSRP on a car. You can look up all the specs. You can compare it, its torque, its horsepower, blah, 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 its safety rating. So you could show up and know more about a particular car than the salesman. But now you'd be confused. So whereas before you wouldn't buy because you didn't have enough information, now you don't buy because you're confused. You have too much information. You can't sort, sift, and separate. You can't decide. So our job is to ask questions the prospect can't answer. Ask something they haven't considered. Okay, we know the questions. On my website for 20 years, I've had both my frequently asked questions and my should ask questions. Okay, so the should ask questions are where we differentiate ourselves. Those are the things that the prospect doesn't even know they don't know. And so when you ask a question they can't answer, when you ask a question they haven't even thought of, they logically and hopefully correctly assume that you have the answer. Okay, and so we differentiate ourselves by our diagnostic process. That's literally the bedside manner of a doctor. Like, oh, I'm going to get a second opinion. It's because the doctor did not make you feel heard. I was just on another podcast and I was referencing that TV show, The Pit. And it's, these ER doctors in a hospital in Pittsburgh. And, this administrator's coming down. She's like, we got to be nicer to people. We got to improve our ratings. So they're like, when you're meeting with a patient, pull up a chair and sit. Get on their level. And they talk about that like with kids, you want to be sitting down. And, when you go see the boss may sit in his desk and make you stand. So these different levels, or conversely, take a seat, and the haggard, rugged cop comes around and pokes you in the chest. Where were you at 10:30 last night? So these angles, these levels matter. So what is your bedside manner? Does the prospect or the patient, feel heard and understood? Did you listen to them? Because if they feel like you see them, you hear them, you know them, you can relate, now they'll listen to a diagnosis and a prescription. Okay, but until then, they're like, you're just pushing product on me. We're going to get a second opinion. Send us some information, send us a quote, and we'll be back in touch. So if you're getting that all the time, it's because you're rushing things. Your prospects don't feel heard. And so if you act like every other salesperson, the only way you can differentiate yourself is on price. And that's a tough way to live.
Yeah, so well said. Gosh, do I look forward to the day that AVC goes from always be closing to always be curious. I love that acronym a heck of a lot more. And the way that you talk about what that curiosity looks like, sounds like, feels like, just reminds me of that quote that we've all heard since childhood of people won't always remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And Wes, I actually, just this morning, this is a fun sales anecdote. I had a tire in my nail, which I'm convinced is just one of the least pleasurable human experiences.
You had a tire in your nail? That's a big nail.
Yeah,
you have
correct.
A nail in your tire.
100%. I had a nail in my tire. 100%. But you could see that's how flustered I was. Like, all I wanted was for this stupid thing to be fixed, that my English doesn't even make sense on the air anymore. But I'll tell you this, that when I went to Discount Tire, and I'm going to shout them out by name, it was the most pleasant experience ever. And Wes, it's not because they're any better at removing a nail from a tire than any other tire shop. Let's face it, everybody can do that. But they made me feel like I was so taken care of. Like they actually cared about me, or they gave me that impression. To them, it was routine business. They do it all day, every day. And it's that feeling that we all walk away with, which to me, it sounds like part of the way that you personally impart that feeling is through listening skills and that curiosity that you alluded to. But I know a lot of listeners are going to be banging on their speakers being like, Brian, ask him about what I should say. And we always hear conflicting advice there about sales scripts or, ways that we should lead them to the yes. What's your take on that? Is there a script that we should be following? Are there certain things we need to say or should be saying? How do we handle that part of it?
Look, scripts work, okay? But it has to be a good script. How much money did The Rock or Tom Cruise make, in the last year? I mean, it's been a minute since I looked it up, but I mean, The Rock was making like over 60 million a year. And what does that dude do? He takes a script, makes it believable, makes it enjoyable, and he repeats it. How did Oprah make millions and billions, and David Letterman and all these guys, right? They ask good questions, created in advance, and they shut up and listen to the answers. Okay. So the reality is most of us get bored doing anything repeatedly. But look at like your favorite band. I met the lead singer for the band Chicago at a conference in like 2013. He bought my book. It was an Infusionsoft conference, and Jason Sheff, I had him on my podcast, and sure enough, he came to town and gave me gave me free passes and then backstage passes. And some of the founders, the original members of the band Chicago, are older than my dad, and so they've played Saturday in the Park 10,000 times, 20,000 times, right, since the 60s. 25 or 624, right? How many times have they played that? And so it would have been understandable, if some 65, 70-year-old dude got up there in Temecula, California, and just Saturday in the Park, I need a beer. I think it was July something. Okay, he's old. He's done it 20,000 times, but he didn't. They were perfect. They were 11 years later. I'm still thrilled to have seen them live. Okay, which goes to show, an amateur will do something until they get it right. A professional will do it until they can't get it wrong. Okay, so do you care enough to master your craft and stick with what works? Okay, we hear the thing, dad jokes. Well, why do dad jokes work? Because they're funny, they're groaners, but they're reliable. And they're safe, right? And you get a chuckle out of it. But they're solid. They're proven. I have my go-tos, right? Because when I'm with a new audience, a new crowd, they've never heard it. That's why, like, magicians don't show their magic tricks. Like, I carry around little magic tricks, and I'll do them just as little icebreakers. And they're these things. This is a plastic, 50-cent magic trick, but it's fun. But you don't show them how you do it, because then you remove the magic. So, can you bring that same energy and excitement and curiosity every time to every at bat? Okay, so yes, scripts absolutely work, but it's got to be a good script. It's got to be appropriate. And my script will change based on who I'm talking to. If it's a receptionist, I have a different script. And if I reach an executive assistant, it's different. If I reach the CEO, it's different than if I reach the CFO. They all have different concerns. Okay, so I have to speak to their concern. But people that just want to wing it, I guarantee you they're not making as much money as they could. I guarantee you that they're worried each day, each night. Did they do their best? Are they in position to hit their numbers? And they're probably not. So it's like, why do we want, quote unquote scripts for how Subway makes our sandwich, how Ford makes our cars, how our doctors do surgeries on us or our loved ones? They all follow a script. You ever board a plane? You look in the cockpit, you have two pilots with identical scripts, identical checklists, and they both verify that each step is performed properly in the proper order. Right? Is that reassuring to you? You're like, those guys are so bad, they need a script and they need somebody to look over their shoulder. No, it's reassuring. So embrace scripts, but get a good one.
Yeah. Wes, there's one element to your script, so to say. Obviously, you're a fellow podcast host and you go on a bunch of other podcasts as well. You do speaking in so many different arenas. And the more that I research about you, I'm going to publicly call this out because I feel like it's part of your magic, many aspects of your magic. And that is you give people something to grab onto. And this is where I want to use this transition to really talk about the personal side of sales. Because even in your bio, which your bio is part of the Wes Schaeffer script, when you go on other shows and when you have speaking engagements, it's not just about you and your work. You give us things to grab onto, whether it's jujitsu, you mentioned that yourself, whether it's your love for music. Now we know that you really enjoy the band Chicago, or whether it's the fact that you were duct taped to a bar in Korea. All of these things, whether we resonate with them or not, they pique our interest and they give us something to relate to. And I think that too many people, especially because we have that term B2B, business to business, is people pretend that businesses can sell to businesses and make decisions as businesses, but at the end of the day, it's just people. So I would love for you to talk to our audience about the people side of sales, and whether it's you giving people things to grasp onto about your own personal backstory and hobbies and interests, or just being personable, as that basic adjective goes. How important is that personality in sales?
Not as important as you think. We've always heard, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. Obviously, if you can become an Alex Hormozy, Gary Vaynerchuk, they get paid for who they are. I mean, they know stuff, and they became famous because they know a lot and they execute it well. They execute it consistently. But for the typical average salesperson, we overemphasize being known and liked, and we don't put enough emphasis on being trusted. That's why most salespeople struggle to hit their numbers, because most of them are going out there trying to be professional visitors. They want to be known and liked. Each of those are about 1% each. Being trusted is 98% of the key. And you can be a jerk and be trusted. Okay. You can come in kind of brash. You cut to the chase. Yeah, they wish you'd be more sociable. They wish you'd bring them some donuts. But you deliver a good product at a good price. It's on time. It's good warranty, good reliability, blah, blah, blah. It does what it says. They'll keep buying from you. Now, I'm not saying that means you can just go be a jerk, and you should be a jerk, because yes, the tiebreaker of being trusted is, are you known and are you liked? Because we're going to buy from people that we know and we like. But I've got friends I love hanging out with, but I won't buy from them and I won't refer them. But hey, they're a lot of fun to hang out with. So make sure you're trusted, number one. So create that brand reputation, then focus on becoming that personality.
Yeah, I love that. We've got to go deeper there then, Wes. There's a lot of different ways to build trust. What does that look like in your world?
Overpromise, underpromise, overdeliver. Understate. It's hard, right? When you're new, you're anxious. Maybe you've been around. You're getting a little desperate. My dad always says, if you think you're desperate, you are. You start overpromising, and then hoping and praying things work out. So. But look, it's as simple as this. If you are doing outbound, outreach to prospects, and you follow a script, you leave a voicemail message, you have an email related to that voicemail, and then you say in that voicemail, hey, Brian, it's Monday, it's 12:25. I'll give you a call Wednesday before lunch. Now I call on Wednesday. Are you looking forward to this cold call number 2? Not particularly. But I do what I said I'm going to do. I call you, hey, Brian, it's Wes again. Left you a message Monday. I was telling you about this, that, and the other. Today I want to tell you about this, that, and the other, something different. I'll send you another email. I'll give you a call tomorrow, between like 3 and 4. I call tomorrow. I get your voicemail again. Now you have 3 voicemails, but they're all different. Each one telling a different story. You get an email that's tied to the voicemail. And say, hey, have a good weekend, and I'll give you a call on Monday. Now, 4 times in a row, I've done what I said I'm going to do. And you're like, and again, nobody is particularly wanting to hear cold calls, but it's part of business. And you're like, okay, this guy's different. I leave a concise message. It's an informative message. Each time it's a little different because most people, again, they're winging it. Hey, Brian, it's Wes again. Yeah, I'm over at the sales whisper. Man, you're a hard guy to reach. Well, I hope you're okay, but give me a call back. And okay, have a good day. And I call you on Friday. Well, Brian, it's Wes again, the sales whisperer. Dude, you were a busy week. I mean, probably back to school. Okay, I get it. I hope it's not too hot where you are. Have a good weekend. I'll call you next week. And you're not looking forward to that, But if I'm calling each time with the tip, with a little nugget, with a feature, with the benefit, kind of piquing your curiosity, I send you a short email, maybe with a link to a testimonial, a link to a case study, a link to a tutorial. Now you're like, okay, this is interesting. And I do what I say I'm going to do. Now I connect with you on social media and I don't pitch you. I reinforce something. I share your posts, again, without pitching, without asking for anything. Now you've heard from me, 3 phone calls, 3 emails, there's 6 touches. I engage 3 or 4 times in a week on your social. Now we're up to 9, 10, 15, maybe engagements. Maybe I write a letter, send you something in the mail. There's a 10th, 11th, 12th touch. Multimedia, multi-step. Phone call, email, social, direct mail. Like, holy crap, who's this guy? Because it's the consistency that matters. People will come to me and they'll ask for help, like with copywriting on their marketing and their outreach. And I'm happy to help because it's quite easy. And I tell them, you're going to be surprised at how little I write for you, because it's the showing up, and I equate it to dating, right? It's a courtship. I like this girl, and I show up, and I have a box of chocolate covered almonds, but she has a nut allergy. She's like, oh, I can't eat it. Does she hate my guts? No, it's the thought that counts. She said, my mom and my brothers, my mom and dad love them. They're going to love you for bringing them. Okay. And the next day I show up and I bring some flowers. Oh, but she has an allergy to pollen. Does she hate me? No, I didn't know. She's like, oh, that's fine. My aunt lives next door. She loves them. I'll give them to her. I'll bring them to school. My teacher loves them. The next day I, offer to take her to a movie, but it's Terminator. She hates blood and guts, right? Okay. But again, does she hate me? No, it's the thought that counts. So it's the showing up that matters. And then she's like, man, this guy I think really likes me. I think I like him. He's cute. He's consistent. He's sincere. Okay, he stands out. Nobody wants to stand out. They don't want to make that impact. They want AI to write some long, boring thing that's just delete, block, mark as spam. Delete, block, mark as spam. So just keep showing up. That's the most important thing.
Boom. Listeners, I feel like Wes in real time, not prepped with any of my questions before this. Wes, I feel like you just gave all of our listeners a real life follow-up sequence that sounds like it's absolutely going to crush. I'll say as a prospect, you revealed one of my biggest hacks with regards to salespeople is that when I get phone calls, I always say the same thing, no matter how interested or uninterested I am, is, hey, call me back next Friday, because I want to see, are they organized? Do they actually want it? Am I just a number that they're just going to forget about? Or are they actually going to follow through? And a lot of times I'm blown away at the exceptional salespeople, how organized and how much they care about adhering to the things that me as the prospect that I said, and they carefully follow up with me on that next Friday. And I feel like that is value in and of itself to show how much they care and how much they have attention to detail, how oriented or process oriented they are, how organized they are, all very important traits that those in and of themselves prove them. So Wes, I knew that time would fly by with you today, and I already know that listeners are going to want more of you. So I'm going to ask you to pimp your podcast, share all your links with us in just a minute. But before we get there, I always love asking a super broad question at the end of every episode. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. And as a fellow entrepreneur yourself, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with?
You've got to invest in coaching. Okay. And you got to nail it. Find someone that resonates with you and go as deep as you can with them. Maybe it's a $99 course. Maybe it's a $99 a month course or membership. Maybe it's a $2,000 retreat, a $5,000 mastermind, whatever. But I see this way too often, and I can drift off into this. We have 50 tabs open. We have 50 tabs on each screen open, our iPad or iPhone, both screens on our computers. We're signing up to newsletters and wherever else. We're in 12 different school groups. We maxed out our LinkedIn group membership. We accept every group invite on Facebook, and it's just so much noise that nothing ever happens. You can't, business success, right, is not a charcuterie board. You've got to drill down deep into one thing. Okay, you've got to learn to block out the noise. And so if you're strapped for cash and you got to grab coins out of your cushion and your ashtray and to get the cash for a course or something, so be it. When you pay that money, you'll pay attention. Okay, and only through paying attention and applying yourself will you become good enough at that skill that someone will pay you to do it, for them. And then just like, the band Chicago, go do that over and over and over and over and over again. You can literally do it in your sleep. Can you get so good, that I can call you and you go, okay, go to settings, go to the fourth row over, go to reports, go the 4 tabs down, click on, bar chart, whatever. Okay, do that. Okay, export that to a PDF. Okay, now take that, can you do it while you're sitting at a stoplight, because your customer's in a panic. When you get that good at something, you'll be known for it, and people will pay whatever you want to charge, and then life gets good, But skimming 37 reports, joining 15 different, free school groups, you're just going to be part of the mediocre majority, and be frustrated in life, and that's a shame. There's too much out there for you to succeed, but you got to focus.
Boom. Wes, I love and appreciate that advice for our listeners. I knew that you would be an absolute rock star showing up here on the air today, and I'm so grateful for the way that you give so much of your wisdom, your experiences, your stories, and all of the lessons that you've personally picked up from others as well as from your own self along the way, how freely you give those to others. And that's why I'm going to kick it back to you in just a second for your links and for you to drop your podcast info as well. But before I do that, Wes, I'm going to tease for listeners what I really appreciate on your website is that, listeners, if you want more of Wes, he has a daily newsletter where you get tips on sales, marketing, business, leadership, family, faith, and yes, some jujitsu. He drops those references as well, which we can learn life and business lessons from that as well as a free digital copy of his Inbound Sellers newsletter. It's free. You do it online on his website. So, Wes, I've primed a little bit of that, but I'm excited for you to drop some links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, check it out. So, thesaleswhisperer.com. My podcast is thesalespodcast.com. Just keep it simple, man. Keep these things simple. And, check it out. Engage with me on social. Ask me some questions. See if you like me. You may not. I'm a little bit unfiltered. I'm an old grandpa, though. I've earned the right to be gruff, angry, but I'm not. But yeah, dude, check it out, right? Find me on social. I don't outsource that. If you hear from me, it's from me. I offer a free consultation. You get a link to my calendar, and we talk about whatever's going on. If I can help you, I'll show you my different programs. But, I know a lot of people. I refer more people out than I try to sell to. And I can't help everybody. I've got a pretty chill life. I don't want to help everybody. But get some help, So if you think I can help you, if you got a business need, you got something you're grappling with, I've got my 12 Weeks to Peak program. It's a free habit tracker with that. But then I do that as one-on-one coaching. It's 12 weeks. It's not forever. It's not some super high dollar thing, but I say it's reassuringly expensive. But like I said, if it doesn't sting a little bit, you're not going to value it. But yeah, check it out, thesaleswhisper.com, and say hi. You know, it's funny / sad, like how few people do. You know, because I'll get a text and I'll reply, "It's just really Wes." Like, I'll take a selfie, you know, like, I'm sitting here at my daughter's soccer game. You got me. What's up? You know, it was like a lot of people, maybe probably even you, Brian, right, are more accessible than people realize. And of course, some abuse it sometimes, so I'll just slow down on my replies. But most people don't take the opportunity to reach out, you know, and so please don't be that person. Reach out and say hi. Let me know if I can help.
Wes, I love that call out. I do that at least once a week. I remind our listeners, 99% of listeners listen to a podcast episode, get inspired, get excited, and never do anything. And Wes, you called it out. I think you and I are two very well-positioned people to make these claims as podcasters ourselves of top shows in our respective categories, that most people don't reach out. And we would love to hear from them. That's the stuff that keeps us going. You and I don't have this conversation to help ourselves. We have these conversations publicly to help other people. So listeners, Wes talked about keeping things simple, and you already know the drill. We're making it as simple as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Be one of those few that actually reaches out. You're going to get Wes personally. He's such a joy to work with, to learn from, so don't be shy. Otherwise, Wes, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.